This is All India Radio. In Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on guidelines for social media platform. The participants are Jiten Kumar Jain, cyber expert, and Aditi Tandon, journalist.
The government today released a very important set of new guidelines that will regulate several social media platforms, digital news platforms, as well as the over-the-top platforms. And this was a much awaited set of guidelines, Mr. Jain, as we all know that Information Technology and Electronics Minister, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, had in the first part of the budget session apprised the Parliament that one such set of guidelines is about to come. And the need was felt for a long time because there was a sense within the social media community and also among the consumers that there is an absence of grievance redressal mechanism. So the new guidelines now put into place a number of measures whereby the social media platforms and intermediaries will have to actually respond to consumer complaints and also complaints from the government with respect to unlawful content. What do you have to say on the broad framework of these guidelines?
I think what government has done, they have tried to find a very fine balance between self-regulation, oversight, and sort of ensuring that how these big giants are brought into some sort of governance control and to ensure that they comply with the law of the land. So if you look, what government has done is that they have now differentiated in the new draft IT rules between the social media intermediaries and the significant social media intermediaries. So what they have said is that a social media platform which has got more than 50 lakh customers in India or users in India would be labeled as a significant intermediary, and they would have to do some additional compliances. For example, they would then have to now appoint 3 officers, the compliance officer, grievance officer, and a nodal officer in India, which should be available 24/7. And he has to be a resident of India. He can be a foreign person, but he has to live within India. This is to do away with the problem that these platforms were not complying with Indian law. Most of the grievance officers were sitting in some countries like Ireland. They would not respond for several days. So to do away with this problem of timely compliance and non-compliance, government has ensured that these significant social media intermediaries would now have to have these 3 people based out of India. At the same time, to ensure that there is no stifling of innovation or there is no extra regulation or problems created for small startups or innovators who are just trying to build new businesses. So the people who have got platforms which have got less than 50 lakh users, they can continue to do their business in the normal fashion. All the restrictions and the sort of additional compliances are coming for the new platforms. Second, the government has said that if there is any content which is brought in the notice of these platforms by a court order or a government order or through any lawful order, that content would have to be blocked, restricted, or taken down within 36 hours. If any user approaches this grievance officer, especially in the cases of revenge porn or obscene content or blackmailing content and stuff, these officers will have to respond to those complaints within 24 hours. So I think this is a very fine way of empowering users. Government is also saying that if these social media platforms, sometimes they are acting on their own free wills and fancies, they suspend account of users, they take down content, they restrict their post, they do some sort of shadow bans. If there is any moderation or blocking or restriction of any user's content or his account, these platforms will now have to inform that user. They will have to give him an opportunity to appeal that order. And if that user is not satisfied within a month of the resolution with this social media platforms, he can always approach the government.
I had to ask you about a very important part of the social media regulation guidelines released today, where the government is saying that intermediaries providing services primarily in the nature of messaging, for instance, WhatsApp, also Facebook, would have to enable the identification of the first originator of information on its computer resource. Mr. Jain, I'll take you back to 2 years when you remember there was a kind of an epidemic on WhatsApp of fake messages, after which a lot of law enforcement challenges had arisen. Even at that time, this debate had been initiated that WhatsApp should disclose the source of the information from where is the unlawful content being originated. But WhatsApp, contrarily, had taken a position that they protect the privacy of users, and since all conversations are end-to-end encrypted, they would not share with the government as to where did the unlawful content actually take birth or originate. So how will the government comply with this? I mean, how will the legal guarantees be put into place to ensure that WhatsApp complies?
In last 3-4 years, we have seen the growing nature of political conversations over social media, growing politicization of social media, where 70% of conversations today are on political topics, which has led to extreme views, sometimes degrading political discourse, fake news, rumor mongering, Now, there is another thing what we have seen in last couple of years is that foreign powers are running propaganda campaigns within India using information warfare by running several fake news websites, posting rumors about our policies to incite violence within India. Now, what government is trying to do, they are bringing in sort of a guideline or a rule within this notified draft today, whereas they are saying that if any fake news, rumor or something unlawful content is found on these platforms, government by court order or by a lawful order can ask these platforms, including WhatsApp, to disclose the identity of the first originator or the uploader of that content. There has been, I think, a confusion in this conversation when it comes to WhatsApp and other platforms which are end-to-end encrypted, which are instant messaging platforms. I think there are some people who are trying to spread rumors that government is now asking these companies to provide a backdoor or their chat history and stuff. I think the laws make it very clear that government is not looking for their chats or personal conversations. All government is looking is for metadata and the identity of the first user who uploaded a particular URL, a link or a video, which WhatsApp can easily trace. For example, when you forward a message several times, these days you see that this message has been forwarded so many times and all those things. So WhatsApp does keep a track of metadata. WhatsApp does know the identity of the first uploader of that content. I think government is looking for that very little metadata to establish the identity of the propagators and originators of those content.
I think what you said is also something which the IT minister made very clear today when he was announcing the new guidelines, when he actually stressed that
Yes.
the social media intermediaries would have to reveal details of the first originator of the mischievous post and no other important details or nothing else related to any kind of chat history. As you said, only metadata is required. But again, the issue comes back to whether WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter would comply, because we have undergone a lot of problems on account of fake news being peddled through WhatsApp and through Facebook. And we saw recently last week how Facebook managed to actually strike a deal with the Australian government when the Australian government was planning a law asking Facebook and Google to pay up for hosting news links on their platform. So it's not easy to get them to comply. What I want to understand is what kind of a legal guarantee will the system have to make WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter comply with our orders?
I think there is this growing discourse and phenomena across the world where, take the case of Australian government's dispute with Facebook, where Facebook and Google are refusing to pay to the Australian news media outlets. They are refusing to comply with the Australian law. Or you take the example of Twitter refusing to comply with the lawful orders of Indian government last month to take down certain fake accounts posting violent content. Or then issues of Twitter trying to be banned in some African countries on the charge of influencing elections. So I think there is a growing concern and phenomena where these big techs like Facebook, Twitter and Google are refusing to comply with the local laws. Now, it is in that context, even today, Minister made it very clear during the press conference that, look, WhatsApp has almost 50 crore users in India. And I think if you look at the whole spectrum of the social media networks, I think almost around 40% users come from India. They make huge money from India. Now, there cannot be a case that these platforms can think that our laws, our sovereign parliaments are subservient to their business policies, which is why Minister was saying that they are welcome to do business in India, they are welcome to have users, they are welcome to make money, but they cannot refuse to not comply with the law. They cannot spread anarchy in the name of defending free speech. They cannot have dual standards. When a US Capitol is attacked by mobs and angry protesters, you suspend thousands and thousands of accounts. Whereas in India, where there are violent protests on the streets of Delhi, when the red for the symbol of Indian democracy is attacked and the national flag is insulted, these platforms have taken a different view and they are not suspending accounts despite of lawful government orders, refusing to comply with Indian law, and then sort of saying that we are trying to defend free speech. So I think the very purpose of this draft intermediary guidelines is to ensure that there is now a legal backing to ensure that these companies comply with the law and they appoint officers in Indian territories, are resident officers. Government of India can take action against in case they refuse to apply with law.
That's a very important point you made. I'll now take you forward to the OTT platforms, Mr. Jain. As we all know that there again has been a lot of public debate on the nature of content being shown on a lot of OTT platforms. The issue even came up in the parliament where Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad himself spoke of how a number of such channels are failing to self-regulate. So how does this three-tier system of regulation for OTT platforms work? Because the government today said that there will be a grievance redressal mechanism even in respect of these platforms.
there are a lot of complaints and there has been a growing concern over the content which is now today being made available and served on OTT platforms. See, these have been unregulated. They don't come under any self-regulation or censorship till now. Even the reputed platforms like Amazon, Hotstar and Netflix are mostly serving series and web content which is full of nudity, expletives, violence, abuses, and children are watching them. And then obviously there was a lot of complaints about the kind of religious trouble these OTT platforms and the series were creating. So what government has done, that government has now created a 3-tier soft touch self-regulation system for these OTT platforms and the digital media news platforms, the websites which are running in the name of news. What they have said is that, look, whatever compliances electronic channel has to do under the Cable TV Act or a print publication has to do under the Press Council of India Act, the similar things have to be then now adhered to and complied by in spirit by these OTT platforms for video content or these news websites for stuff they're publishing in the name of news. Now OTT, they are saying that, look, you can self-regulate. There is a code of ethics which government has now put in place that what should be done and what should not be done. They have to comply with that code of ethics in a self-regulating manner. At second level of regulation, they can form a federation or a group of self-regulating mechanism, like the TV channels have a news broadcast authority. So they can create an independent agency which can be headed by a retired Supreme Court or a High Court judge or independent person who can then oversee the self-regulation. And this is sort of an industry body and players can form it among themselves. Government will have no interference. At the top, government is saying that finally we will have an oversight mechanism to look at these first two levels of self-regulation. Suppose if OTT platform or any OTT platform refuse to comply or serve with the code of ethics, then probably somebody can go to this self-regulating body of industry, file a complaint there if they are not satisfied, if that mechanism is also failing for some reason, or if there is an emergency where content has to be taken off immediately. Then this oversight mechanism headed by the Secretary of Information and Broadcasting can issue directions. Whatever powers government had under the Section 69A of IT Act to block certain content in India which can threaten our sovereignty, integrity and public order, which was done in the case when government asked Twitter to take down certain accounts recently. So what government has done, they have sort of divested the powers related to video content or this OTT platforms, etc., to the Ministry of Information Broadcasting. So they have sort of said that, look, for IT related issues and technical issues and stuff, Ministry of IT will deal. For content related to news or OTT platforms, Ministry of Information Broadcasting and the Secretary of Information Broadcasting will be the designated officer. And then they will follow the same process of law to ensure that these platforms comply. Second, very important to know that this is not a censorship. These OTT platforms do not have to take any certification from an external agency. All government is saying is that you start classifying content, what is suitable for 12-year-old, what is suitable for 18-year-old, what is suitable for 16-year-old, and ensure that a 12-year-old does not end up watching nudity or extreme violence, which is fine in my case, I believe. Second, government is also saying that all these digital news platforms which have suddenly popped up in last 3 years in thousands and thousands of numbers, now still government is saying that you don't have to seek any license or register with the government. What you have to do is that you have to sort of appoint an authorized representative of your platform or a portal and give his details to the government so that government knows who's running the portal and who can government communicate or deal with in case of any emergency. So that is the only slight amount of regulation government has brought in.
The rules, Mr. Jain, bar social media content that is defamatory, obscene, libelous, racist, harmful to minors, threatens the unity, integrity, defense, security and sovereignty of India and Indian ties with other countries. One issue that will arise is, which if you could respond to, is that this is a very vast definition of content and the nature of content that has to be barred on social media platforms, and that the government has arrogated to itself a lot of powers while defining such content. So how will that balance be struck?
There is no additional power government has created today. These are just guidelines within the existing law. And Supreme Court has also said that the right of free speech and the people's right to information and use these platforms to express their view comes under Article 19(1), your right to have free speech and information. And that then also comes along with Article 19(2), which is reasonable restrictions on free speech. So that is why all these issues of public order, sovereignty of India, relations with foreign states, they have all been existing for long for any platform, whether you speak on TV, radio or newspapers. Government has just said that they will also now apply on the digital media platforms, and this was already there in existing law. Government has just notified it.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Jain.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on guidelines for social media platform. The participants were Jiten Kumar Jain, cyber expert, and Aditi Tandon, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.